report out there that probably some of you have seen that suggests that if we make no changes in the way in which plastic enters the ocean, there will be more plastic by weight than fish in the ocean by 2050. Already today, on an annual basis, we are releasing the equivalent of 5 plastic bags full of plastic for every foot of shoreline into globally into the seas every single year. And you know all of the terrible things that come with plastic in the ocean. It obviously is a wildlife killer. It's a navigation mess, and it ultimately is toxic to humans, as today we're finding 59% of seabirds having plastics, 100% of sea turtle species, 25% of fish that were sampled from seafood markets around the world in one study. It's catastrophic already, and yet we don't even seem to have our hands wrapped around the scope of the problem. So we are trying to sort of exercise this muscle in the United States Congress of sort of forcing the Senate to think about this issue of seawater and sea life restoration. And the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act builds upon a important but incremental first version. The second version is a tad more aggressive, and as Steve mentioned, it's bipartisan. I've worked on this with Senator Whitehouse on the Democratic side, Senator Sullivan and Murkowski on the Republican side. This bill sort of sets up a new apparatus to fund a rescue effort for the health of our seas. Now, it's an authorization bill, not a funding bill, but it sets up a new apparatus, kind of admitting that what we have today simply is not working. So first and foremost, it sets up a marine debris trust fund. So a fund, a new fund that can take in significant federal dollars. Second, it directs NOAA to establish some programs to look at the feasibility of reaching out and doing incentive programs for fishermen to collect and dispose of marine debris. We already do a lot of that in Connecticut, and sort of having that as a national priority is a mechanism by which we can try to grab hold of this problem. A second funding account, I should have mentioned up front, is established similar to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. This bill establishes a marine debris foundation that would support NOAA state and local efforts. Probably the piece of this bill that I'm most involved in is the establishment of what we've called a Genius Prize, and this frankly comes out of the work that's been done here at Mystic. So this bill establishes and sets up the funding mechanism for a Genius Prize for Save Our Seas innovation. And then lastly, it would set up a waste infrastructure loan fund. We'd set up a new revolving loan structure that would help states and localities repair and reform their waste infrastructure. But what this legislation does is it formalizes U.S. policy on international cooperation, so it makes it the official policy of the United States that we are going to engage with the international community level. But let me sort of open it up to the table for some discussion before I know many people have to run off on commutes home. So with that, let me open it up.
Well, I got one.
Go.
Of course.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I'm with Citizens Climate Lobby, and we see your office every year down in D.C. and sometimes here in the state. And I'm the state coordinator for Citizens Climate Lobby. And we have a bill in the House, H.R. 763, and it's put a price on carbon. And the question I would have is, to get that bill in the Senate, we'd like it to be bipartisan. How would you see a bill that prices carbon, which goes to the source of the petroleum, which makes plastic, integrated with this kind of program in Save the Seas 2.0? I mean, this would help you, I think. So how do you describe how you might look at that?
I mean, that's a really important and interesting question that probably begs a little bit more thought than I can give it immediately. You know, and what pops to my head as a response is probably not satisfactory. One of the one of the challenges we have right now is that the politics of carbon and carbon dioxide are just, getting worse, not better right now. There was a Republican years ago who introduced that very bill in the House of Representatives. Bob Inglis of South Carolina thought that it made perfect sense to introduce a bill that increased a tax on carbon and used every single dime of that to decrease taxes on your payroll, right? So why don't we start taxing what we don't want and stop taxing what we want, labor, right? And it would be a net zero to the federal government. Well, he lost his seat in a Republican primary as soon as he introduced that legislation. We have not been able to get Republicans to work with us on that big ticket legislation since. And so one of the challenges here is how do we make some progress on other issues while we're stuck on the issue of climate change. And so, we have not tried to attach these two issues together because we feel like we've got Republican support on debris and we've got Republican buy-in on the trust fund and the Genius Prize and the international agreement. And so let's keep it. And that's not a satisfactory answer because we've got to be able to walk and chew gum. We've got to figure out why we can't get Republican buy-in on the climate catastrophe that's upon us. But at the same time, we can't lose the bipartisan agreement we have here. So we haven't sort of said, hey, this is all just a piece of a broader climate agenda, because if we did, we worry we might lose a little bit of the bipartisan support that we have, and that's sort of sad to have to say out loud, but it is the political reality we live in today. So I think that's part of the answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.